Dr. Silverman is a disabled activist and a social scientist who is passionate about improving public understandings of life with disabilities. Can you share some do's and don'ts you wish the public would know about blind etiquette?
So I would say a do is to introduce yourself and don't assume that the blind person remembers you by your voice. They might remember you if you've had repeated interactions, but they might not. So it's always a good idea to introduce yourself. If you have any kind, if you're in a role where you have some kind of uniform or a badge or something like that a sighted person can see, and you're meeting a blind person for the first time, it's a good idea to give them that information verbally. I would say another do is to listen to the blind person, and it's okay to ask them if they need help, but it's also important to listen to the answer that they provide you. And if somebody asks you for directions, they want directions. They don't want to be grabbed or steered or pulled around. And so I guess then that goes into the don'ts. It's never okay to grab or steer or pull another person, anybody really, without their permission, unless it's an imminent life or death situation. So do ask if you're not sure if somebody needs help or what kind of help they need. Do ask them. Do listen to their answer. Don't assume. Don't grab them. Also, don't touch a white cane or a guide dog without permission. Sometimes people think the best way to lead me is by my cane, and I need my cane to tell me what is immediately in front of me on the ground. That's a safety thing. So if somebody picks up my cane and starts pulling on it, I don't have information about what's in front of me. So it's important not to lead somebody by their cane. It's also important not to grab their guide dog's harness or pet their guide dog while they're working. Just ask the person how you can help, and the person might want to hold onto your arm, or they might just want you to give them directions.
What do you wish society understood and or appreciated about blindness?
Well, I guess this goes back to what I was saying earlier. I wish that society would understand that blindness is not a death sentence. It's not sad. It's not scary. It's just a normal part of human diversity, and that blind people are capable of engaging in all the same kinds of life activities that sighted people engage in. We might do things a little bit differently, but we can work, we can have children, we can participate in sports, we can enjoy leisure kinds of activities. We can go to movies and listen to movies that are audio described, or with friends and family describing what's going on. We can enjoy movies, we can enjoy art. We enjoy traveling, all the same kinds of things that everybody else enjoys.
Thank you. Could you share a specific example of when you experienced ableism?
So my husband is sighted, and when we were dating, he was renting a basement apartment. So there was a landlord who lived above him, and sometimes I would come visit him, and so the landlord saw me come in and go downstairs and visit him, but the landlord didn't really know me as a person. He just knew that I was blind and that I used a cane. And my boyfriend at the time, told me that when he told his landlord that he was going to move out so that he and I could start living together, the landlord made a comment to the effect of, "I know you're a nice guy, but you can do better than that." And I consider that to be ableism, and I think it's interesting because it affected him, and he definitely had, I think, a lot of feelings about it, but it also affected me because this landlord, and I'm sure he had the best of intentions and thought he was being kind, but he made a judgment about me having never spoken to me or had a conversation with me. It was just based on my physical appearance that he saw through the window as I was going downstairs to visit his tenant. He made an assumption that I would not be a good partner for his tenant, or that his tenant was dating me out of kindness or something like that. And so I consider that to be ableism.
Dr. Solomon has been a professor of biology at Gallaudet University for over 2 decades. She's also an adjunct professor at the University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science and serves on master's and doctoral committees for research on increasing the participation of deaf and hard of hearing people within STEM. Dr. Sullivan, can you share what misconceptions exist about deafness you wish were debunked?
Yes. One thing I wish is that people would not think that it's hard to communicate with us. There are multiple modes of communication that you can use, such as writing a note back and forth, typing, also texting. With technology these days, it has been much easier to communicate with each other. And I want to heed a warning to people not to be afraid to communicate with us, and that can often lead to misunderstandings. And so I'd hope to debunk that myth.
Can you share some do's and don'ts you wish the public would know about deaf and hard of hearing etiquette?
Yes. So one thing is that when people often find out that I'm deaf, the first thing that they tell me is, I'm sorry. There's nothing to be sorry about. That's how I've lived my life. And that's how many deaf people have lived their life. So that phrase, I'm sorry, is not necessary. Additionally, if you find out somebody is deaf, for example, maybe you're talking to us and you don't realize that we're deaf, and then you say, oh, I'm sorry that you're deaf. Or sometimes they'll say, never mind, and they'll stop saying whatever it is that they were trying to say. And I want to know what you were trying to say. It's important. So instead of saying never mind, do continue to have that conversation and switch the mode of communication that you're having. Maybe write a note back and forth, text, or even type it out. I'm happy to answer your question. For example, if somebody is, driving or walking down the street, they might say, where's the grocery store? I can answer that question. I can tell you the grocery store is, just down the street. All I need is for somebody to change the mode of communication. Also, when you are interacting with a deaf person who has an interpreter, ask your question directly to the deaf person, not to the interpreter. The interpreter is going to interpret for the deaf person, and look at the deaf person that you're talking to, not to the interpreter. It's important to have eye contact with the person you're having a conversation with, not the interpreter. And this is our language. This is how we communicate. It's functional and it's very important to us. I think often that when people say comments like that, it feels like they're not recognizing, that person is there. So for example, when I work in the science field, somebody comes up to me and they'll ask me about a sign rather than my work. And I have a lot of research work that I do in the science field and science environment. And instead they're making it about the language that I'm using. And I'm a deaf person first versus a researcher first. So those are some of the do's and don'ts that I would share when it comes to etiquette of interacting with a deaf person.
What do you wish society understood and or appreciated about deafness?
I wish society would not be so inclined to fix a person, right? They're so inclined to fix a deaf person. So a person like me who grew up deaf, I don't know anything else. I don't miss hearing anything because I never had that experience. And that is a very similar experience for many other deaf people. So it's hard to miss something when you've never experienced it. There's oftentimes, individuals don't miss flying because they've never had that capability, right? And so it's akin to me not having heard anything. I don't miss that experience because I never had that experience. And I feel like oftentimes society doesn't understand that. And again, going back to my earlier comment, people don't have something to be sorry about when they find out that I'm deaf because I've never experienced anything else. This is how I live my life, and I do live my life differently. Another example would be, oftentimes I get the question, you can drive? Many people think that deaf people can't drive. And often my son will say, what's the difference between a deaf person driving and a person who isn't deaf and they're driving with the radio blasting? They've got the music on equivalently as loud and they can't hear a siren. I often see a siren before anybody hears it. I see the flashing lights of the sirens. And I think right now it's interesting. We have a shortage of truck drivers all over the country. And deaf people are struggling to get their license to be able to drive a truck. And deaf people are actually, and proven by research, are actually much better drivers than people who are not deaf. And if more deaf people could get their license to be able to truck drive, they would be able to resolve some of that demand that is happening right now. And there is a lot of assumptions about what deaf people can and cannot do. I always like to say that deaf people can do everything but hear, and that's true. We have found many workarounds and many solutions to various issues. And so the only thing we have to think about is, what is the solution? And just ask us.
Tony Budaval was diagnosed with autism as a toddler. He received his undergraduate degree at the Art Institute of Sacramento and majored in media arts. He currently works for Amazon. Tony, can you share what misconceptions exist about autism that you wish were debunked?
Yeah, people just think we live in our own world, but what we really look for is an opening to join in on everyone else's conversations.
Can you share some do's and don'ts you wish the public would know about autism etiquette?
See, young adults in particular don't like to be talked down to as if they were children.
What do you wish society understood and/or appreciated about autism?
Yeah, we are creative and we can contribute to society.